I'm with Elana Heideman from Israel Forever Foundation. Now, Elana, Holocaust Remembrance Day is coming up very soon. How does the nation remember the Holocaust?
The nation of Israel is spread all over the world and has adapted different ways of memorializing the Holocaust. Yom HaShoah, which is what it is called in Hebrew, is the day that was established on the Israeli national calendar immediately after the conclusion of the Holocaust, even before the birth of the state. It was dedicated on the day that the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising took place, and the brave Jewish fighters in the ghetto resisted against the Nazi onslaught of Jewish life. So that date changes every year on the Gregorian calendar, on the secular calendar, but it is honored by day of solemn commemoration and storytelling. Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day, and the term Shoah in Hebrew means catastrophe. Holocaust is a word that originally means wholly consumed by fire. And the term was actually coined as a reference to the destruction and the extermination of the Jewish people by my mentor and professor, Elie Wiesel. He himself, a survivor of the Holocaust and a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, he used this word to refer to beyond the massive catastrophe and how much was consumed. So, very often, commemorations for the nation of Israel, again, being those in Israel and Jews around the world, include the lighting of flames of memory. Very often, it is 6 or 7 for the 6 million Jews, which was the number originally believed to be the count of victims, and since, with new research, has been expanded to well over 7 million with the discovery of unmarked mass graves throughout the landscape of especially Ukraine and Belarus. But the commemoration events that take place are also educational. They give people an opportunity to hear the voices of the witnesses, and there are, unfortunately, very few who are still alive to tell their story. People take pride in being able to pass those stories on, and we now have more second and third generation descendants of Holocaust survivors who are taking a leadership role in the continuation of Holocaust memory alongside of the museums and community organizations that really work very hard to make sure that this memory is not lost with the passing of time, and that it becomes even more meaningful, especially now in a world where we see that this type of hate that brought about the Holocaust is rising all around us again, and the murder of Jews is once again becoming socially acceptable.
What will you see on the streets on Holocaust Remembrance Day? Does the country stop?
The country in Israel, yes, comes to a standstill. At 10 a.m., there is a siren on the morning of Yom HaShoah. In keeping with the Jewish calendar, the evening before is when the actual memorial date begins. And on that evening, we have community programming and, of course, local storytelling for many of the communities in an amazing program that was started here years ago called Zikaron Besalon, Memory in the Living Room. It's a program that has also expanded all over the world, and more people are looking to hear the voices of survivors. That is on the evening of Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. On the day of, which is the following morning, and this year it is on May 6th, so May 5th is the evening program. And on May 6th at 10 a.m., there is a siren, and the entire country comes to a standstill. Cars driving on the highways will just stop and stand still for this moment where we are asked to remember. The siren is a reminder of not only of the lives lost, but also of the sacrifice that was made in that allows us to understand the Jewish experience throughout history. Around the world on the Yom HaShoah day itself, there's an incredible program by the March of the Living, one of the most wonderful organizations that for over 35 years has been, for 36 years now, has been marching from Auschwitz to Birkenau in a commemorative march that recalls the death marches that had been taken place after January 1944, when the Jews of the death camps, the Nazi extermination centers and labor camps within Poland, were then marched by foot into Germany proper by their German guards and their capos and other overlords from different ethnicities that were taking part in the Nazi process. They marched them into Germany, and today the March of the Living every year on Yom HaShoah marches as a march of life, a march of a reminder of just how much we have sacrificed and how much more our fight remains relevant as we're fighting never again now. So that is the two various experiences of how it's commemorated, one being within Israel and the other being international. Of course, Holocaust museums around the world, Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, hold important ceremonies and allow survivors to tell their testimony as well, which is very important for protecting the history and the personal experience so that the Holocaust or anything like it can never happen again.
Will this year be more poignant? It's the first one after the genocidal massacre from Hamas on October the 7th.
I think that it's going to be not only more poignant, but also more painful, more difficult, more challenging for everyone to separate ourselves because of the uniqueness that October 7th represented and our natural tendency to associate these atrocities against Jewish innocent lives purely because of hate. There are too many similarities that we can think of, but we forget that it's important to keep them distinct. And I think that that's going to be a fine line some people are going to have a tough time with this year as they put their ceremonies together. Also, because how do you have just a memory of the Holocaust without making those connections? I believe that it's going to be very important for people to remember that there are victims of October 7th who were Holocaust survivors or who were the children and grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. And they are astounded, were astounded to see that such hatred could be unleashed upon the Jewish people, such unmitigated evil that they recall so vividly from their youth. It's going to be much more powerful also this year's Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I think that on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which takes place on January 27th, the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, it was also noted. But today, this time on our Jewish Day of Remembrance, I think that there will be many more tears that are falling not only for the victims of then, but also for the fears that we have today. What will be happening? Where are we headed? Where is the world? Why are people not doing more to fight against these waves of hate? Why are they so afraid? We ask ourselves questions like, what could we have done more? You know, when I was teaching throughout the years, people always said, why didn't people do more to resist the Nazis? We're living in that time today. And we have to wake up to those calls to action and the lessons that we can learn from the past.
There's the phrase never again. Does it shock you to see the student protests in America?
I wish I could tell you that it shocks me, but unfortunately, I've been watching this develop for almost 20 years. We have seen this take shape in many ways. We have called attention to it, and it has been ignored. So now we are at a massive upheaval of public displays of calling for the genocide of Jews by claiming that the Jews are committing a genocide. There is a very strong similarity with Nazi rhetoric when the Nazis were accusing the Jews of poisoning the Christian and Aryan blood and communities with their presence. They enabled logical hatred against Jews. And now that
Mm.
is being employed again. That if you accuse the Jews of being the problem, it makes it easy to allow them to garner interest in eliminating the Jew. And today, the Jew, of course, is Israel, as well as Jews on the campuses. So I'm not shocked. I'm only shocked to see how little collective response against these movements of terror are taking place. We are not seeing enough of the activism publicly to counter their lies, and Israel's truth is stronger than any lie. So I think that The shock for me is that it's going as far as it is. I'm also shocked to see that the attention is being paid only to campuses and complete denial of what's happening in elementary schools, public libraries, middle school and high schools, and of course in the workplace. These are such crucial spaces, yet people are being demonized in them, and it's going unnoticed. So when we say never again, we have to think of all of the components of social acceptance of Jew hatred that enabled the outright murder and extermination of the Jews. The stepping stones to that onslaught took over a decade. We're already living within a time of extremism, and every effort needs to be made to quench it, to really make sure that we are stopping these patterns of extremist thought from spreading wildly amongst our communities. And then we can really fulfill the obligation of never again.
There's a rise in anti-Semitism. Do you think we've actually learned a lesson of the Holocaust?
No, I don't,
Mm,
unfortunately.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that very often, even trying to teach about anti-Semitism actually awakens anti-Semitism. Teaching about the Holocaust can awaken people's ideas that, as we see, is one of the most popular trends in social media today, that Hitler is right. And Hitler left a few Jews so that the rest of the world would know why he did what he did. They are very effective in creating a logic for the elimination of the Jew. And it's crucial for the common person to be able to dissect that logic and emphasize that another logic does exist, which is that not only is the Jew a human being with human rights, just like everyone else, but more importantly, that there is a role that the Jew is playing for all of humanity. And as it says in the Bible, he who stands with Israel will be blessed, and he who blesses Israel will be blessed, and he who curses Israel will be cursed. That is true, and it will remain true. So I think that the only lessons that we can glean from the Holocaust are perhaps those that teach us how to handle, address, preempt, prevent the patterns when we start to see them. Now, of course, that method can be employed by either side of the political spectrum. You see that many people who are, for example, in the United States, anti-Trump or any other right-wing movement, they use the lessons of the Holocaust as tools to advance their own agenda. Then you have the opposite taking place as well. So it's very precarious to assume there's only one set of lessons of the Holocaust. So I believe that for each human being whose life was destroyed or impacted by the Holocaust, either at that time or in the 80 years since, I think that each one of us have lessons that we have to uncover that will drive us forward in a more proactive way to aid the human existence as according to good values, human values, the
Mm.
kinds of values that allow other people to bless Israel, stand with Israel and the Jewish people, not only today, but forever.
Do you think that anti-Semitism is a spiritual thing? The devil wants to destroy God's promises and his chosen people.
I love this idea because I think that, first of all, I think that bears merit. I do think that we, as I mentioned, I think we're living in a bit of a godless world where people are negating God only if it's certain people's God, right? And so, what is the devil? You would look at a current, I'll use the hostage crisis, for example, where Israel is being forced to negotiate with the devil. Is that a
Mm.
spiritual battle? Absolutely. The world is facing a spiritual conflict, and anti-Semitism is a evidence, a piece of evidence of it. It's anecdotal. It allows us time and time again to see situations exactly as they are, right? The attack of a Jew, the hate of a Jew, the logical discrimination of Jews, even in your diversity education methods, they are anti Semitic at their core. So it's not only a spiritual battle with the devil, but it also with today, the most spiritual battle is against terror, which is a tool of the devil. I extract the devil from it because I don't believe that people today really accept that the devil is swarming all around us in the embodiment of the terrorist movements and in the hate, but it's all being disguised as social justice. So it's
Mm.
spiritual, it is intellectual, it is physiological. I think it all has an impact. If you notice the way that human beings are living today, the way people eat differently, and the way people adapt their culture, this is all an upheaval of humanity. And absolutely, I think we can say that there's a hand of God and a hand of the devil in war right now while we're living in it.
How will you remember the Holocaust this year?
Well, on October 7th, I heard a story of children who hid under dead bodies while the terrorists continued to attack their communities. And I, in all of my years of research, have heard these stories again and again. I will be very careful from making the comparison between the two events because October 7th, that massacre happened in a free Jewish state that was infiltrated by the very evil that we were just discussing as the hand of the devil. So I'm very cautious. But on October 7th, we know that there were incidents that do remind us of the type of threat and momentary survival that was required during the Holocaust. Whatever I can do, I will do in order to survive, in order
Mhm.
to outlast this devil. For Yom HaShoah this year, we at Israel Forever have put out a variety of resources, one which actually includes a commemoration of the associations that we draw naturally when we hear of Jews being victimized and how our memory of the Holocaust can aid our understanding and our translation of that memory into something proactive for the future. So, our webinar for my memorial program this year is called Yesterday's Pain Today, because it echoes not only yesterday's pain from the Holocaust, but also the pain that we are still feeling today from the most recent onslaught of Jewish life that is so reminiscent of the murder of men, women, elderly, and babies so brutally as they were on October 7th and as they were in the ghettos and in the homes again and again during the Holocaust and in the camps themselves. We will also be, as partners with the March of the Living, we will be continuing through social media to share various stories to make sure that information and personal experiences are both shared. Because, as my mentor always said, Elie Wiesel, that he who hears a witness becomes a witness. So we are aimed at helping people be witnesses in a healthy way, whatever that means, because there's no healthy way to experience pain, but there is a way that we can translate it so that it has greater meaning. We have a variety of reading resources that can be used in personal or in public settings. And we also have podcasts and video programs that have been put together to help people engage in a very deep way with the messages that we are intended to inherit.
What is your prayer for Holocaust Remembrance Day this year?
This year, there are only 55 survivors able to join on the March of the Living from Auschwitz to Birkenau, as I mentioned. And there are hundreds in Israel who are starving. And there are children of Holocaust survivors who feel lost. There are descendants of Holocaust survivors who are being swayed by the lies. And my hope would be that we would be able this year, for the first Holocaust Remembrance Day after October 7th, to channel our collective pain into a unified blessing for our people for the future. Because we are witnessing history repeat itself. With all of its original elements, we are seeing what happens in every single generation. We are seeing a wave rise up with the Jew as the scapegoat. And I hope that with all of the prayers we will say in the memory of the millions who were murdered at the hands of the Nazis, that those prayers will also be translated into protection, protection for our Jews everywhere around the world who are under threat, protection for our hostages who remain in captivity, and No one really shouting out, other than the Jewish people and our friends of Israel. We do not have enough people shouting out for their freedom and for their innocent lives to be remembered. We have to be careful not to equate the two, but we have to use the lessons of the Holocaust to channel our energy. And my prayer would be that we do it in a unified way, that we find methods that we can make an impact, that we can touch each other's hearts, open each other's minds, and find ways to translate never again into something new, because never again is now. And it is up to each one of us to do more. Jew, non Jew, in Israel, and especially around the world. We must translate lessons of the Holocaust, and we must give each other hope. We must give each other strength, because it is very easy. It will not look the same. It will not be lists and gas chambers and cattle cars, but it will be isolation of Jews followed by massacre, the massacre of the spirit and the massacre of the body. And it will take all of the good people of humanity everywhere, the righteous among the nations. It will take all of our strength to resist it. So my prayer is that we do so with as much unity and dignity as we can.
What's your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
We at Israel Forever welcome everyone around the world as virtual citizens of Israel. Come to israelforever.org and you can join our global community, which is focused on emphasizing the centrality of Israel as nation and in our homeland, and our rights as human beings, and as one of the great civilizations of the world, one of the peoples of the world that can guide the world through our lessons for your life. Israelforever.org. Come and follow us on our social media streams, engage with us. You can come and you can be an ambassador and activate programming in your own community. By doing more, we are making a greater impact on the world, and God looks down on us and sees the good. And may that be a part of our collective prayer. May God bring peace upon Israel, upon all the Jewish people, and upon all people everywhere. Oseh shalom b'mromav, that he will continue to give us as much guidance as we can. And Israel, when we say Israel forever, it's not just about our state. It is about our people and our heritage and our destiny. And this is something that we've carried now for over 4,000 years. So everything that we do about with Israel Forever is about carrying on that legacy for eternity. So we welcome you and we look forward to engaging with you. And please be in touch. We hope we give you just a little bit of hope during these difficult times.
Well, Ilana, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Paul. Every opportunity to talk to you is something that is very enlightening, because it's not often that we get to hear different voices. We're very often talking into our own echo chambers. So you have your community and I have mine. But isn't it wonderful that we're be able to share each other's experiences? I know that the Israel Forever community loves hearing the stories about you, my colleague in Bethlehem, and what you teach us. So may we continue to teach each other. And thank you again for the opportunity to talk with all of you.